He's a therapist and researcher at the forefront of psychedelic-assisted therapy. Rick and his team have spent decades running clinical trials and crafting therapies using MDMA to treat PTSD. One of his patients was Tony.
Tony was a veteran in one of our pilot studies. The treatment that Tony was to receive...
They're talking about using ecstasy to treat PTSD. Listen to this. This is on 91.5 Talk Radio.
We call our treatment approach inner-directed therapy, in that we support the patient to experience whatever's emerging within their minds or their bodies. During Tony's first MDMA session, he lay on the couch, he had eye shades on, he listened to music, and he would speak to the therapist whenever he felt that he needed to. In a moment of calmness and clarity, Tony shared that he had realized that his PTSD was a way of connecting him to his friends. It was a way of honoring the memory of his friends who had died. He was able to shift and see himself through the eyes of his dead friends. And he realized that they would not want him to suffer, to squander his life. They would want him to live more fully, which they were unable to do. And so he realized that there was a new way to honor their memory, which was to live as fully as possible. That was 7 years ago. Tony is still free of PTSD and is helping others less fortunate than himself in Cambodia.
Wow.
I mean, it's an incredible story, but, you know, was Tony a special case? How has the program done overall? What is the success rate?
So, in phase 2, we looked at the control groups, and what it turned out is that 23% at the 2-month follow-up no longer qualified for a diagnosis of PTSD with therapy, basically. But when we add MDMA to the mix, now 56% no longer have PTSD. But even more important than that is the 12-month follow-up. And at the 12-month follow-up, 2/3 no longer had PTSD.
Okay, so you've seen it work in a therapeutic setting. But that doesn't mean that it would work for everyone or that there aren't any risks involved,
This
right?
is crazy.
Yeah. So
They're talking about using MDMA. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's ecstasy to treat PTSD specifically for veterans. It's pretty amazing. I'm not against it. I think it's very interesting. But this is the first I'm hearing about this.
way to get to these experiences.
Wow.
So I think one of the big mistakes of the 60s was that the advocates said, I've taken psychedelics, I know more than anybody. Unless you've taken psychedelics, you don't really know what's going on. And exaggerated the benefits and minimized the risks. In the face of the government that was getting more and more scared about psychedelics and counterculture, they were denying the benefits, suppressing the research, and exaggerating the risks.
Okay, so then what would you say is the biggest hurdle for you right now, Rick? Like, is it to be able to get MDMA into the hands of therapists and then to patients? Is it still regulations and the government?
Well, in the process of this, we have basically changed the attitudes of regulators. They actually would like us to succeed. I think the biggest concern that we have now is public education. It was the public fear in the 60s and 70s that led to the wiping out of psychedelic research around the world. The regulators were following sort of the attitudes of the public who got frightened about problem use of psychedelics.
It's crazy.
But there's a general sense now that we are in the midst of a massive crisis of opiate overdoses,
Arizona
fentanyl overdoses, alcoholism, drug deaths of despair. The need is greater than ever before. The war on drugs is seen more and more around the world as not a solution to drug abuse, but as a contributor to drug abuse and to the black market. So all of this, I think, is that public education is the most important thing for us to do now.
I'm proud to say that we have now initiated our phase 3 studies. And if approved, the only therapists that will be able to directly administer it to patients are going to be therapists that have been through our training program, and they will only be able to administer MDMA under direct supervision in clinic settings. We anticipate that over the next several decades, there will be thousands of psychedelic clinics established at which therapists will be able to administer MDMA,
Thousands of
psilocybin,
psychedelic
ketamine,
clinics?
and other
Wow.
psychedelics
This
to
is
potentially millions of patients. And now, if you all just look under your seats.
Wow.
Just joking.
That's Rick Doblin. He's founder of the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies.
Wow. Well, that's something you don't hear every day on the news or talk radio. My goodness, I had no idea that I knew they were doing studies like this back in the 90s. But this is the first that I've heard of something like this in over 25 years. Now I'm giving away my age. But it's crazy because, you look at a situation like this and you think, wow, I guess if anyone has done MDMA, done ecstasy in the past, you know that it does have some qualities that I could see how it could help people with PTSD. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hit me up.